Hi, my name's Keri, and let me tell you about my 5 favorite books from when I was in prison. First, kind of predictable, Orange is the New Black. I read it just a few weeks before I was going to get out, cried the whole way through. Second, The Art of Racing in the Rain. This is about a dog. I missed my dog so much when I was locked up. Third, The Keep by Jennifer Egan. It's half in prison, half in like a made-up fantasy world, and I love that sense of escape. Fourth, The Infinite Jest. This is great to read in solitary because it's so thick. Also, it has some really good stuff about recovery. And fifth, Staying Alive. Somebody gave me this a couple days after I got arrested and told me also, hey, you should keep a journal because this is all so weird. You should write a book someday. So I did. This is my book. It's called Corrections in Ink. One of the things that people ask me a lot about prison is like, what do you do all day? When you're in prison, you actually have a job a lot of the times, and that sort of takes up a lot of the hours of the day. When I was in prison, I had a bunch of different jobs. I worked in the mess hall, which that sucked. I worked outside grounds, that also sucked. And they both sucked for the same reason. You couldn't bring anything with you. You got searched before going to work, so you couldn't bring a book for all the downtime, you couldn't bring crosswords, you couldn't bring anything. And then I also worked as a janitor, and that was okay, because you could bring a book along for that. And you still had a lot of downtime, but you didn't have to just sit there and stare at the wall. And then my favorite was working as a rec aide, because all you had to do was you were in the gym and you just had to make sure that nobody stole the free weights, and that was pretty much it. And otherwise you could work out or make out with your girlfriend in the rec shack. But yeah, those were my prison jobs. To learn more about them, it's in the book. When I was in prison, I read all the time, but we had some really weird superstitions about books in there. One of the ones that really freaked me out was that there was this belief that if you left a book half finished, you would come back to prison. Like it was some curse and you would come back to finish it. So when I was leaving, I was halfway through a book. It's this one, House of the Spirits. So I stole that shit. I took it with me. So this way I can finish it. I'm not unfinished. I'm still reading. I didn't leave it incomplete. One of the most important things I learned from going to prison is that statistics apply to you too. I went to prison for heroin, and when you're doing drugs, you have to constantly lie to yourself. You have to tell yourself that these outcomes that are statistically possible are not going to happen to you, that you're not going to be the one that overdoses and dies, that you're not going to be the one that uses a dirty needle and catches Hep C, that you're not going to be the one that gets arrested and goes to prison. You have to tell yourself that you're too smart or too safe for those things to happen. But, the reality is, those are statistically going to happen if you use drugs long enough. And in the end, they will happen to you. That's one of the lessons I learned from going to prison. And if you want more, I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Corrections in Ink. It is kind of dark and depressing, like this video, but the end is happy, I promise.